Sam loved quiet mornings by the water. His small wooden cabin sat right at the edge of a wide lake that stretched like a mirror under the rising sun. The air smelled fresh, the birds sang from the trees, and the gentle sound of water touching the shore made him feel calm. For years, this cabin had been his escape from the noisy town nearby. Sam was not a man who cared much about fancy things. His cabin had no shining tiles or big screens. It had a fireplace, a rocking chair, a small kitchen, and shelves filled with books. The lake was his real treasure. He could sit for hours on the old wooden dock, watching the water ripple. Sometimes he fished, sometimes he wrote in his notebook, but mostly he just enjoyed the silence. Not far from his cabin, a small community had grown over the years. Houses were built around the lake's outer side, and with them came the Homeowners Association, or HOA as everyone called it. The HOA liked rules. They liked neat lawns, painted fences, and approved decorations. They wanted things to look the same, tidy and controlled. Sam, however, was not part of their group. His cabin was older than their houses, and his land went back generations. His grandfather had bought the lake itself, along with the land around it. That included the only parking lot for visitors who came to the lake. Sam never joined the HOA because he did not need to. His cabin stood on land that was his alone, and his rights were different from theirs. At first, the HOA ignored him. They thought the quiet man in the cabin was harmless. But as more people moved into the community, some members of the HOA began to see Sam's cabin as a problem. It did not match their perfect image. It looked too simple, too old. They wanted every home by the lake to follow their rules. One morning, Sam found a letter taped to his cabin door. The paper had a shiny HOA stamp on the top. He frowned and read it slowly. The letter claimed that his cabin broke several community rules. It said the wood of the cabin was too dark. It said his dock was not approved. It even said his fishing boat was an eyesore. At the bottom, it stated he must remove his cabin within 30 days or face legal action. Sam chuckled. He had seen many strange things, but this was new. Remove his cabin? The cabin that stood long before the HOA even existed? He folded the letter and placed it on his kitchen table. Then he made tea and sat by the window, thinking. The next day, 2 HOA board members came to see him. One was a tall man named Mark, who always wore neat shirts tucked into his pants. The other was a woman named Clara, who carried a clipboard like it was part of her arm. "Good morning, Mr. Sam," Clara began with a polite but sharp smile. "We're here to talk about your cabin. It doesn't fit with the neighborhood standards. You'll need to vacate." Sam raised an eyebrow. "Vacate? This is my home." Mark cleared his throat. "The rules are clear. Every property around the lake must follow HOA guidelines. Your cabin does not. We're prepared to enforce the rules." Sam leaned back in his chair. His eyes twinkled with quiet amusement. "Tell me, friends. Who owns the lake?" They glanced at each other, unsure. Clara spoke first. "The lake is part of the community space." Sam shook his head. "No. The lake is mine. Bought by my grandfather many years ago. I have the deed." Mark frowned. "Even so, your cabin still breaks our rules." Sam smiled slowly. "And the parking lot by the entrance, where all your visitors leave their cars. Do you know who owns that land?" Neither answered. Sam stood, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a folder. Inside were old papers, faded but strong. He placed them on the table. "I own the lake. I own the parking lot. Your rules stop at the edge of my fence. If you want to use my water or my lot, you follow my say, not the other way around." For a moment, silence filled the cabin. Clara's pen stopped tapping against her clipboard. Mark's confident look faded. Sam poured himself more tea and added gently, You wanted me to leave, but I think it's you who needs to think again. The lake you enjoy, the lot your guests use, the dock you fish from, it all rests on my land. Without it, your rules mean little." The two HOA members exchanged uneasy glances. They had walked into the cabin expecting an old man easy to push. Instead, they had met the owner of everything that made their neighborhood valuable. Sam watched them with calm eyes. He was not angry, just firm. "I'm not your enemy," he said. "But I won't be pushed out of my own home." Mark cleared his throat again, this time without confidence. "We'll bring this matter back to the board." They left quickly, leaving the letter still on Sam's table. As the cabin door closed, Sam looked out at the lake, the water glowing under the afternoon sun. He knew this was only the beginning. The HOA would not give up easily, but neither would he. The cabin, the lake, the land, it was all part of his life, and he was ready to protect it. The news of Sam's words traveled quickly through the neighborhood. By the next evening, the HOA board gathered in their community hall, a neat building with glass windows and tidy floor beads. The members sat around a long table, papers spread out, voices sharp with tension. Clara spoke first, tapping her clipboard. "He claims he owns the lake and the parking lot. If that's true, it complicates things. Our rules depend on access to both." Mark leaned forward. "It's probably bluff. Who owns an entire lake? We should press harder. If we let him stay, the whole neighborhood will see us as weak." Across the table, an older man named Robert adjusted his glasses. He had been in the neighborhood longer than most and remembered whispers of Sam's family history. "I think he's telling the truth," Robert said calmly. "His grandfather was here before any of us. That cabin stood long before this HOA was even a thought. We should be careful." But not everyone agreed. A woman named Helen raised her voice. "Careful? His cabin looks like a shack compared to our houses. Property values will drop. Visitors will think our community is poorly managed. We can't just let him ignore the rules." Clara nodded quickly. "Exactly. If he doesn't obey, others might follow. Today it's his dock, tomorrow someone else will paint their house purple. Order must be kept." The board argued for nearly an hour. Some wanted to push Sam into court. Others feared losing access to the lake if his claim was real. At last, Clara suggested a plan. "Let's call for a legal review. If he truly owns the lake and the lot, we'll know. Until then, we send him notices, warnings, fines, anything that makes his life difficult. Sooner or later, he'll give up." The vote passed, though Robert shook his head. He had seen stubborn men before, and Sam reminded him of the kind who would not bend easily. Meanwhile, back at the cabin, Sam continued his simple routine. He chopped firewood, fixed a loose board on his dock, and watched ducks glide across the water. But he knew the HOA would not rest. Their pride was stronger than their reason. 2 days later, another letter arrived. This one was thicker, filled with legal words. It demanded payment of fines for breaking HOA rules. It listed penalties for his non-approved dock and his unauthorized boat. The total amount was written in bold numbers at the bottom. Sam laughed softly as he read. He placed the letter next to the first one. Then he walked down to the dock, sat on the edge, and dangled his feet above the cool water. He thought about his grandfather, who used to tell him, "Land is power, Sam. If you guard it, no one can move you." The next morning, Sam took action. He went to the county office, carrying the old deed in his folder. The clerk behind the counter, a friendly man named Peter, greeted him. "What brings you here, Sam?" "Need a copy of land records," Sam said. "HOA is trying to push me out." Peter raised his brows. "The HOA again, huh? I'll get the papers." Within minutes, Peter handed Sam fresh copies of the documents. The papers clearly showed the lake and the parking lot listed under Sam's family name. No mistake, no doubt. Sam thanked him and slipped the copies back into the folder. That evening, Sam prepared for the storm he knew was coming. Sure enough, the following weekend, the HOA board marched to the edge of his property. Clara held her clipboard tight, Mark stood tall with a stiff smile, and several other board members followed behind. "Mr. Sam," Clara began, her voice sharp. "You've ignored our warnings. You owe fines for multiple violations." Sam stood on his porch, calm as ever. He held the folder in his hand. "And I told you before. Your rules don't touch this land. This cabin is older than your board, older than your houses, older than your flowers and fences." Mark stepped forward. "You can't defy the HOA. We'll take this to court." Sam opened the folder and held up the new copies. "Go ahead. Take it anywhere you like. These papers show I own the lake. I own the lot where your guests park. Without me, your community loses both." The board members leaned closer to see. Clara's confident smile weakened. Helen gasped softly. Robert, who had come along but stayed quiet, gave a small nod as if to say he had known all along. "You depend on my land," Sam continued firmly. "The lake you advertise in your brochures, the lot where your friends leave their cars, all mine. You can fight me, but you will only hurt yourselves." The group stood in uneasy silence. For the first time, the balance of power was clear. The man in the old cabin was not weak. He held the heart of their community in his hands. Sam looked at them with calm eyes. "I'm not here to cause trouble. But I will not be forced out. If you want peace, respect my home. If you want war, be ready to lose more than you expect." The board members shuffled, unsure what to say. Finally, Clara turned on her heel. "This isn't over," she muttered. The group followed her back toward the road, their steps less certain than before. Sam watched them go, then turned his eyes back to the shining lake. The water reflected the sunset in gold and red. He knew battles were not won in one day. More letters, more threats, more tricks would come. But Sam also knew something else. He was ready. The cabin was not just wood and nails. It was his history, his freedom, and now it was the line he would not let anyone cross. A week passed quietly after the tense meeting at Sam's cabin. The lake shone under the summer sun, children played near the shore, and neighbors walked their dogs on the path that circled the water. Yet behind the calm, the HOA board worked in silence, planning their next move. Clara was not ready to give up. She called a lawyer who often worked with the HOA. His name was Mr. Grant, a sharp man in a gray suit who enjoyed battles in court. She explained the situation in detail, making Sam sound like a stubborn troublemaker who refused to follow rules. Mr. Grant leaned back in his chair. "If the deed is real, then he holds power. But sometimes power depends not on papers, but on who pushes harder. I can write a letter that makes him nervous. Many people give up when they see legal words." Clara smiled. That was exactly what she wanted. 2 days later, Sam found another envelope on his porch. Unlike the others, this one had the name of a law office printed on the front. He opened it slowly, reading through the heavy lines of text. It accused him of disturbing the harmony of the community. It threatened lawsuits and damages. It warned that failure to comply could cost him far more than he imagined. Sam read every word carefully, then folded the letter and placed it on his table with the others. He was not a man easily frightened. Still, he knew the HOA was serious now. This was no longer just about rules, it was about power. That evening, Sam made a choice. He would not fight alone. He drove his old truck into town and visited a law office he trusted. Inside, a woman named Anna greeted him warmly. She had been a lawyer in the county for many years and knew Sam's family history. "What brings you here, Sam?" she asked. He handed her the folder of papers and the new letter from Mr. Grant. "They want me gone," Sam said simply. "But this is my land. I need help to remind them of that." Anna read through the documents with sharp eyes. She nodded slowly. "Your deed is solid. You own the lake and the lot, no question. They cannot force you to remove your cabin. But they will try to scare you, drag you into court, and waste your time. The best way to answer is not fear, it is strength. What do you suggest?" Sam asked. "I'll write a letter of my own," Anna said firmly. "One that makes it clear their threats will not work. If they want to fight, they should be ready to face real consequences." Sam felt lighter as he left her office. For the first time, he was not standing alone. A few days later, the HOA board gathered for another meeting. Clara opened the envelope from Anna's office with eager hands, expecting a weak reply. But as she read, her face turned pale. The letter was clear and sharp. It reminded the HOA that Sam's deed was older than the HOA itself. It stated that any attempt to block his access or fine him was unlawful. It also warned that if the HOA interfered with the parking lot or the lake, Sam could close them both to the community until the matter was settled. Mark leaned closer, reading over her shoulder. His jaw tightened. If he locks the lot, no one can visit. If he closes the lake, no one can fish, boat, or swim. That would crush the neighborhood's image. Helen shook her head in disbelief. "He wouldn't dare." Robert spoke up calmly. "I think he would. He's not bluffing. He's protecting what belongs to him. And he has every right." Clara slammed the paper down. "We can't let him win. If word spreads that one man can resist us, the whole HOA will crumble." But even as she spoke, doubt filled the room. The HOA was used to controlling small things: paint colors, fences, lawn care. Now they faced a man whose roots ran deeper than their rules. Meanwhile, Sam continued his life at the cabin. He rose early, fished by the dock, and enjoyed the peace of the water. Yet he also kept watch. He noticed HOA members walking near his land more often, whispering among themselves. He knew they were planning something. One afternoon, Robert stopped by the cabin. He was the only board member who had shown respect during the meetings. "Mind if I sit?" Robert asked. Sam nodded and poured him a cup of tea. They sat on the porch, watching the lake. "You've made quite a storm," Robert said with a small smile. "They started it," Sam replied calmly. Robert sipped his tea. "I know. And between you and me, I think you're right. The HOA should not touch what isn't theirs. But Clara is stubborn, and Mark follows her lead. They won't stop until something breaks." Sam looked at him. "Then let them break." Robert chuckled softly, then grew serious. "Be careful, Sam. They may try tricks, block your mail, spread rumors, even send people to bother you. They'll push until they think you'll bend." Sam's eyes stayed on the water. "Then they don't know me well enough." That night, as the moonlight danced across the lake, Sam sat by the fire inside his cabin. The stack of letters from the HOA sat on the table, now joined by Anna's strong reply. He knew this was just the beginning of a larger battle. But Sam was not afraid. He had the truth, the land, and now the law on his side. The HOA thought they could scare him, but they had underestimated the strength of a man who owned not just a cabin, but the very heart of the place they claimed to control. The lake whispered softly outside, as if agreeing with him. Summer weekends were always busy at the lake. Families drove in, cars filled with coolers, fishing rods, and picnic baskets. Children ran toward the water while parents looked for a place to park. For years, they had used the wide gravel lot near the entrance. Few of them ever wondered who owned it. They assumed it was part of the community. But this weekend was different. When the first cars arrived, they found a tall metal gate across the entrance, locked with a heavy chain. A wooden sign hung from the gate in clear letters, "Private property, access closed until further notice." Drivers were confused. Some tried to turn around, others parked along the narrow road, blocking traffic. Soon voices rose, questions spread, and the HOA board was flooded with angry calls. Clara rushed to the scene, her face pale with frustration. She pulled at the chain, but the lock held firm. Mark joined her, sweat on his forehead as neighbors gathered around. "What is this?" one man shouted. "Where are we supposed to park?" "This is outrageous," said another. "We pay fees every month. Why is the lot closed?" Clara raised her hands, trying to calm them. "Please, everyone, we're handling it. There must be some mistake." But Robert, who stood quietly near the back, spoke in a steady voice. "It's no mistake. The lot belongs to Sam. He warned us this could happen." The crowd turned toward Sam's cabin in the distance. Some looked surprised, others angry, but the truth was now clear: he had power the HOA had ignored. That evening, Clara called an emergency meeting in the community hall. The board sat at the long table again, faces tense. "He's gone too far," Clara snapped. "Closing the lot makes us look powerless. We can't allow this." Mark nodded. "The neighbors are furious. If we don't fix it, they'll turn against us." Helen leaned forward. "How do we fix it?" "Sue him. That will take months. Meanwhile, families have nowhere to park. He's holding the whole community hostage." Robert cleared his throat. "Or maybe he's reminding us of something. He warned us. We pushed him, and now he's showing us the cost. Perhaps it's time we listened." Clara glared at him. "You're siding with him." "I'm siding with reason," Robert replied calmly. "We're fighting a battle we can't win. The lake and the lot are his. If we keep pushing, we'll only lose more." But Clara refused to hear. "Tomorrow we'll confront him directly. He cannot do this without facing consequences." The next morning, Clara, Mark, and 2 other board members marched to Sam's cabin. Sam was on the dock, repairing a loose board with a hammer. He looked up as they approached. "Morning," he said simply. Clara's voice was sharp. "You've caused chaos, Sam. Families couldn't park, children were stranded, people are furious. You must open the lot immediately." Sam set down his hammer and stood. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried steady strength. "I closed the lot because you would not listen. I told you my land is not under your rules. Instead of respecting that, you sent threats, letters, and lawyers. So now I'm showing you what happens when you ignore me." Mark stepped forward. "You're punishing the whole neighborhood for the board's decisions. That's not fair." Sam folded his arms. "Neither is trying to evict me from my own cabin. Neither is sending lawyers to scare me. Fairness works both ways." Clara's face flushed. "We'll take you to court for this." Sam raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead. But while you wait for the court, the lot stays closed. And if you press harder, the lake may close too. No fishing, no swimming, no boating." Imagine explaining that to the families. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. The thought of a summer without the lake shook them. The HOA's power depended on the lake's beauty. Without it, the houses lost their charm, and property values would sink. Robert arrived then, walking slowly down the path. He looked at Sam and gave a small nod, then turned to the others. "He's not bluffing. We can keep fighting, but the cost will be high. Maybe it's time to talk, not threaten." Sam spoke firmly. "I'm not your enemy. I don't want to close the lot or the lake. But I will if you keep trying to take what's mine. Respect my cabin, and everything stays open. Keep pushing, and you'll lose more than you expect." The board members stood in silence. Clara's jaw tightened, but she said nothing more. Mark looked away, unsure. Finally, they turned back toward the road, leaving Robert behind. Robert stayed a moment longer. "You've made your point clear, Sam," he said quietly. "But they won't give up so easily. Be ready." Sam nodded. "I've been ready for years." That evening, word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some residents grumbled about the inconvenience, but others began to see the truth. They had believed the HOA controlled everything, but now they learned it was one man in a cabin who held the key to their lake and their lot. As the sun set over the water, Sam sat on his porch, sipping tea. The chain on the gate was still locked, the lot still closed. He knew the battle was far from over, but he also knew something important: the board was no longer as confident as before. For the first time, they understood that the quiet man by the lake was not someone they could push aside. The lake belonged to Sam, and so did the fight. The closed parking lot became the talk of the entire neighborhood. By Monday morning, every household had something to say. Some people blamed Sam for being selfish. Others blamed the HOA board for pushing him too far. The community, once united under strict rules, was now divided. At the local cafe near town, neighbors gathered in small groups, whispering about the situation. "He's making life harder for everyone," said Helen, shaking her head. "What kind of man locks a gate on families?" But another neighbor, a father named Paul, disagreed. "Maybe we should ask why he did it. The board tried to kick him out of his own home. If someone came for my house, I'd fight too." The debate spread like fire. By evening, the HOA board received dozens of complaints, not just against Sam, but against them as well. People were angry that their summer plans were ruined, but many were also angry at the board for creating the problem in the first place. Clara tried to hold the community together. She sent messages, reminding residents of the HOA's duty to keep order and protect property values. But fewer people were listening. Some had already begun to wonder if the board had too much power. Meanwhile, Sam lived calmly in his cabin. He cooked simple meals, repaired the roof, and spent hours fishing on the dock. From time to time, he saw groups of neighbors standing near the locked lot, pointing toward his cabin. Some looked angry, but others gave small nods of respect when they saw him. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Paul walked down to Sam's cabin. He carried a fishing rod over his shoulder and wore a friendly smile. "Mind if I sit?" Paul asked. Sam gestured to the dock. "Go ahead." They fished in silence for a while before Paul spoke. "You've caused quite a stir." Sam gave a small laugh. "Seems that way." "I don't blame you," Paul continued. "The board pushed too hard. But some of the families are stuck in the middle. They just want to enjoy the lake." Sam nodded slowly. "I know. My fight is not with them. It's with the board. But sometimes, the only way to be heard is to make noise." Paul thought for a moment, then said, "If you opened the lot again, you'd win more support. People would see you as fair, not stubborn." Sam looked out over the calm water. "Perhaps. But I can't open it yet. If I give in too soon, the board will think I'm weak. They must understand that I won't bend." Paul did not argue. He cast his line into the lake and let the silence speak for them. The next day, the HOA board held another meeting. Clara sat at the head of the table, frustration written on her face. "We're losing control," she admitted. "Half the neighbors blame us. Some even question the need for the HOA at all." Mark slammed his hand on the table. "We can't let one man tear down what we built. We need to fight harder." Robert leaned forward. His calm voice cut through the noise. "Or we can listen. He's not asking for money or favors. He just wants us to leave his land alone. If we respected that, the lot would open, and the lake would stay free. Clara frowned. And what happens when the next person refuses to follow rules? The HOA would be useless. Robert shook his head. The HOA was meant to serve the community, not rule it. Maybe we've forgotten that. The room fell silent. For the first time, doubt spread among the board members. That evening, Clara decided to visit Sam alone. She walked down the path to his cabin, her clipboard left behind for once. Sam was sitting on his porch, sipping tea. "Evening," he greeted calmly. Clara crossed her arms. "You've caused trouble, Sam. Neighbors are angry, children are disappointed, families are stuck." Sam's voice was steady. "And who caused this in the first place, Clara?" "I was living in peace until your board decided my cabin didn't fit your rules." She hesitated but did not argue. "You call it trouble," Sam continued, "but I call it a lesson. You don't own me. You don't own this land. If you want peace, respect that." Clara's eyes flickered with frustration, then softened. She had built her reputation on control and order, but standing before Sam, she felt the weight of her choices. "I can't speak for the whole board," she said finally, "but I'll tell you this. If you keep the lot locked, the anger will only grow. Sooner or later, the community will turn against you completely." Sam set his cup down. "Maybe. Or maybe they'll turn against the board that started this fight." Clara did not answer. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing on the wooden path. When she was gone, Sam leaned back in his chair. He knew she was right about one thing: the community was restless. But he also knew Robert was right. The HOA had forgotten its purpose. They wanted power, not harmony. For now, the gate stayed locked. The lake shimmered in the moonlight, quiet and endless. Sam listened to the water and the wind in the trees. He was not afraid of being alone, because he knew something the board did not: truth was stronger than rules when the rules were unjust. And he was ready to prove it. The following week brought more tension to the neighborhood. Word of the locked parking lot spread beyond the community. People who once thought the HOA ran the lake now realized the truth: Sam had the power. Some neighbors whispered quietly in his favor, while others complained loudly to the board. One afternoon, Sam noticed unusual activity near the edge of his property. A group of HOA members had gathered at the corner of his land. They weren't trying to enter, instead, they were measuring, taking photos, and jotting notes in clipboards. It was clear they were preparing something, though Sam didn't know exactly what. He walked down to the dock, fishing rod in hand, and observed from a distance. His calm eyes missed nothing. Among the group, Clara's voice carried sharp and commanding. Mark and Helen nodded, writing quickly. They looked determined, confident that they could find a way to challenge him. Sam returned to his cabin to prepare. He cleaned the dock, repaired a few loose boards, and made sure the gate to the lot was secure. Then he pulled out the folder with the deeds, the letters from the lawyer, and every paper that confirmed his ownership. He laid them neatly on the table. By evening, the HOA board sent a formal notice delivered by a courier. It demanded that Sam open the parking lot immediately and threatened legal action if he refused. Sam read it carefully and smiled. He poured a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the sunset over the water. The orange and gold light reflected on the lake, calm and strong, just like him. He knew the next move would be theirs. But he also knew the advantage was his. The HOA could threaten, write letters, and make noise, but the lake and the lot belonged to him. Without access to those, their power in the community was meaningless. The next morning, the board gathered at Sam's gate again. This time, they brought tools and cameras, hoping to create proof for court. They had a small crowd of neighbors with them, curious and confused. Clara spoke loudly. "Sam, you must open the lot. We are giving you one final warning. This is your last chance before legal action. Sam stepped onto his porch, calm and composed. I will not open it until you respect my property and stop trying to force me out of my cabin. Mark tried to intervene. This is not fair to the families. You're punishing everyone. Sam's voice carried over the crowd. I am not punishing anyone. I am protecting what is mine. The lot is my property. The lake is my property. If you want access, you will follow my rules. Until then, it remains closed. A few neighbors murmured quietly. Some were angry, some were nodding in agreement. For the first time, many realized the HOA had overstepped their authority. Clara's face turned red with frustration. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Robert stepped forward from the crowd. Enough, Robert said firmly. Sam is right. The HOA cannot demand what is not theirs. The lake, the lot, and the cabin belong to him. You can fight him, but you will lose. Respect the truth, and the community will find peace. The crowd fell silent. Even some of Clara's allies looked uneasy. Sam stepped down from the porch and walked slowly toward the gate. He held the deeds in his hand. This is not about me being stubborn, he said. This is about fairness. You cannot control what is not yours. You cannot use threats to take someone's home or land. You want order? Start with respect. Clara's voice trembled slightly. And if we refuse? Sam's eyes were calm, but firm. Then the lot stays closed. The lake stays private. And every attempt to interfere will be met with action according to the law. The words hung in the air. For the first time, Clara and her team realized that Sam's threats were not empty. He had the legal power, the land, and the courage to back it up. Their plan to intimidate him had failed completely. Some neighbors began clapping softly, showing support. Others turned and left quietly, seeing that their fight was over before it had begun. Clara finally dropped her clipboard, her shoulders heavy with defeat. Robert walked beside Sam. You've done more than protect your cabin, he said quietly. You've reminded everyone that rules mean nothing without fairness and truth. Sam smiled slightly. It was never about winning against them. It's about standing firm in what's right. As the sun set completely over the lake, Sam returned to his porch. The water glowed silver, and the air was still. He looked over the locked lot, the calm water, and the dock he had repaired. Everything was as it should be. For now, the battle was over. The HOA had tried to intimidate him, to force him from his home, to take what was his. But they had underestimated one thing: a man who knew the value of his land and had the courage to defend it. The cabin was safe. The lake was safe. And Sam, the quiet man by the water, had proven that sometimes, standing firm is the strongest power of all. After the confrontation, the neighborhood felt different. The locked parking lot and the calm lake became symbols of Sam's quiet strength. Families still arrived on weekends, but now they parked in spaces along the road, some walking a little further to reach the water. Despite the inconvenience, many people had begun to see Sam's side of the story. Inside his cabin, Sam went about his days as before. He repaired the dock, mended the small wooden fence, and spent hours fishing. The lake shimmered under the morning sun, the water reflecting the clear blue sky. Birds returned to the trees, singing their morning songs. Life at the cabin was peaceful once again. One morning, Sam heard footsteps on the path. It was Robert, holding a small basket. "Morning, Sam," Robert said with a smile. "I thought I'd bring some fresh bread and cheese from town." Sam chuckled softly. "You've always been thoughtful, Robert. Come, sit." They sat on the porch, sharing the bread and sipping tea. Robert looked out at the lake. "You know, not everyone sees it your way yet. But the more people watch, the more they understand. Standing for what's right is rare, but it earns respect." Sam nodded. I don't fight for respect. I fight to protect what's mine. But respect is a good side effect. Meanwhile, the HOA board gathered again, this time more quietly. Clara, Mark, and Helen realized that their old tactics had failed. They could no longer force Sam to bend to their rules. The neighborhood had begun to question their leadership. Property values remained high because the lake was still beautiful, but the board's influence had weakened. After careful discussion, Clara finally sent a formal letter to Sam. This time, the tone was different. It acknowledged his ownership of the lake and the parking lot. It admitted the mistakes made by the board and promised no further interference. Sam read the letter with a small smile. The board had learned their lesson the hard way. He set the letter aside and went outside. The sun reflected on the calm lake, the air filled with the gentle sounds of nature. By late afternoon, families began arriving again, carefully parking along the road. Sam opened the gate slightly, just enough for small boats to pass through, but the lot remained closed until the community understood the rules. He wanted to teach responsibility, not create chaos. Paul and his children approached the dock, carrying a small rowboat. "Good afternoon, Sam," Paul called. "We brought the kids for a short trip on the lake. I hope that's okay." Sam nodded. "Of course. Just remember to respect the water and the land." The children laughed as they rowed out gently, splashing water lightly and pointing at ducks floating nearby. Sam watched them, his heart light. The lake was alive, just as it had always been, and he was glad to share it, but on his terms. In the weeks that followed, more neighbors began to understand Sam's point of view. Some stopped blaming him entirely, realizing the board had pushed too far. Others approached him with questions about fishing or boating etiquette, asking politely and showing respect. Sam welcomed those who were courteous, sharing his knowledge about the lake and its history. Even Clara eventually came by, standing quietly on the path. "Sam," she said softly, "I wanted to apologize for how the board handled things. We should have listened." Sam nodded. "I accept that. Rules are meant to serve the community, not control it. Perhaps the HOA can remember that now." Clara smiled faintly. "We will. And we'll respect your land from now on." The seasons began to change. Leaves turned golden and then fell, the lake reflecting the orange and red trees. Sam spent his evenings by the fire, enjoying tea and quiet. He never forgot the lessons of the past weeks. Sometimes, the quietest people hold the most power, and courage is stronger than any rule. By winter, the lake froze slightly along the edges. Sam's cabin remained warm, the fireplace crackling. He looked out at the frozen water, remembering the struggle with the HOA. It felt like a story from another life. The conflict was over, and peace had returned. Neighbors still came to the lake, but now with respect. The board no longer tried to control him, and Sam had earned a quiet place of strength in the heart of the community. He was free to live as he had always wanted, peacefully, safely, and with the knowledge that the lake, the lot, and the cabin were his to protect. As the last light of the day reflected on the water, Sam sat on his porch with a cup of tea, watching the world he loved. The lake was calm, the land secure, and his cabin stood proudly against the sky. He had fought for his home, defended what was his, and shown that courage and patience could protect even the smallest cabin by the water. For Sam, life at the lake would continue, quiet and strong, as it had always been and as it should be.